Hey everyone, welcome to Notion Office Hours. Super excited to have you here. I see there's tons of people from all over the place. We've got Philippines, we've got Germany, Philadelphia, India, very cool, Switzerland. Welcome, welcome. So today's session is all about people who are sharing public pages in Notion, who are hosting websites in Notion in interesting and creative ways. So we've got a few different people from the community who are really awesome examples of ways that they're kind of leveraging the power of Notion to make websites. So Leslie Schrock is here today, who has one of the coolest public websites that I have seen. So I'm really excited for you to share this with us today. Leslie is an entrepreneur, an investor, and an author. I don't know if this is your first book, Leslie. If this is your
first. It is my first book. Yeah.
Cool. So I don't know if you want to start your screen share and kind of introduce the guest here to your project, because I think it's just such an interesting thing. I'm super curious how long you've been a Notion user and kind of how you even figured out that you could do this on Notion.
Well, so this is going to sound crazy. I had never used Notion before, really.
What? No.
Yeah. So I actually, I've been using Notion for a while, actually, to manage tasks and like manage my to-do list, especially as I was wrapping up the publication of my first book, which just came out in December, which is what this is all about. So I had been using Notion for task management. Like I used one of your free templates and just had kind of, the different like to-do, like things to do, in progress, like archive of cool things, and like a way for me to feel very accomplished about whatever I was doing at the time. But I published this book, and I come from tech. I've been in the tech industry for over a decade, and for me, publishing a book was like a bucket list item for sure. It was a thing I'd always wanted to do, but I knew that for me it wasn't going to stop with pieces of paper bound together. So much of what I wanted to say and so much of what I wanted to communicate to my readers fell kind of outside of that space. When you write a book, you have to kind of think of it as evergreen, especially when it's the type of book that I wrote. So my book is called Bumpin': The Modern Guide to Pregnancy. It is meant to be, a guide for partners and pregnant women who want to understand what the process is like from conception all the way through the postpartum periods. And it came from my own personal struggles. I worked in health and tech for about a decade. And, at the end of the day, like I decided to get pregnant and realized that, a lot of the struggles I ran into, I had a miscarriage, I had a second pregnancy that didn't work out. No one was talking about these things. Mm-hmm. And no one was really giving me the information that I wanted. Like I just wanted simple things, like what's the clinical data? Don't tell me what to do. Just like show me what my options are. Show me both what it looks like to have a non-medicated birth and show me what it looks like to have an epidural. So the book is very, it's written to be evergreen content. It's written for, everybody. But, the book was published and I get lots of questions from readers. And especially right now, I'm getting a lot of questions from readers about, the impacts of COVID-19. And so, what I decided to do was, make an interactive version of my book and just open source it for everyone. And so, I was very... it took me a while to figure out what platform to use, actually. So I was like, do I do it in Google Docs? Do I use Quip? Do I use, what is kind of the one thing to serve it all? I have a Squarespace site that I use personally. But, like when you want to host Google Docs and content and a Spotify playlist and all these other disparate bits, like how on earth do you bring that into one platform? And I just was, after a lot of experimentation, I just thought, I don't really know what's going to be able to get there. And so I started using Notion, and I mean it, like I hadn't really done anything other than use that template for task management. But it was really fun for me to dive in. I built this whole thing over the span of about a week, and I've been plugging away at, doing updates and stuff, but really it took me like a day to kind of get my feet under me. I started with someone else's template, which was like completely unrelated, and I ended up not really using that much of the stuff, but it was really good for me as a new Notion user to get in there, kind of see how this person had organized information, and then use that as a jumping off spot rather than just starting cold. So, basically the way that I've structured the site is, it's organized into trimesters for anyone who is pregnant or is going through it with someone else. Trimester 0 is conception. The first, second, and third trimesters are like the ones we all know about. Then the fourth trimester is, after the baby comes. So, I've got my little preface here. I've got my favorite resources under here, which, this gets updated all the time. I have a form that I used with Google. I just embedded a Google form. I have my little updates here. And then, these menu items, this was like a big thing I had to really kind of think through, was like how to organize the information. And I really wanted it to feel familiar to people. So I felt like it was very important to use, footer navigation, as well as header navigation. So this is what I would consider the homepage. And I did actually, there is a custom, so I think you put the link in there to this. It is covid.bumpin.com. So I used super.so to do custom URLs, which was really fun. And then, you hit this first page and you kind of choose your own adventure here. So we'll go into the trimester 0 really quickly. So I've got this nice header image. So really it feels a lot like a normal website, but it's so much more powerful than that. And I used this as kind of the way that I did my, my top navigation. This is an outline of everything that is on this particular page. So I'll take you through this one because I like this page. So I've got, this nice overview of like COVID specific stuff for pregnant people. I have a checklist, which this was a thing that actually is pulled straight out of my book. My book has a checklist for every single trimester, just because so much of what happens during, when you're starting a family is like completely out of your control. So I like to give people things that they can do and maybe some things that they aren't thinking about yet. So this checklist feature was really awesome for me. And then it's kind of deceptive. One of the things that I've heard from people who have been visiting, and I've had, thousands of hits at this point. I actually hooked it up to Google Analytics because I do have those custom URLs. So one thing that I heard from readers is actually like, wow, there's just so much in here, but I wanted to structure it in a way that it didn't feel overwhelming. So I used this nice accordion feature. So,
Nice.
Each one of these, yeah. And this is actually straight out of my book. I cut and pasted a lot of this stuff out of there. So you can kind of, go into the information that you want. This share your parenting goals. This is mostly just text, but I'll go into some other things. So this was a big one. This has been the most frequently asked for thing. But basically, and I'm not sure if this is going to share or not. No, it's not. But it's a Google sheet. So I didn't embed the Google sheet here. I did have a little bit of an issue with that, but I have, this great spreadsheet that I built, which actually feels a lot more like a startup business model than it does a budget. But I think this is kind of the way that I decided to go at it, which is like, structured into these sections. You can go to kind of whatever you want. But then what's really nice is when you're here at the top, you can use the nav to just jump down the page and hit exactly what you want. So if you're only interested in building a baby budget, you can just click on it and hit that. I'll show you quickly something in the third trimester, and then I'm happy to take questions. Yeah, so, wanted to embed some links to things that I thought were important. But again, like each section has a checklist. We have, links to all these resources. Really cool stuff, building birth preferences. And then, I was really excited because like one thing that was great for me during birth is I had music the whole time, but how on earth do you put a playlist in a book? And I also like wanted to include things from, people that I'm in touch with. And so we've got this cool little Spotify player in here, which was great. But yeah, and I would love, if anyone has feedback. It's really easy to get in touch with me if you have ideas, if you have, things that you think are confusing. But I actually built this in about a week. I was a new Notion user, and it was a blast. I just really loved, I loved doing it. It was really, really cool. The name of the book is Bumpin', The Modern Guide to Pregnancy. And I can actually, let's see, I will put a link to my, Simon & Schuster published it. So let's see here. And actually, like, if there are a couple people, that are pregnant, or anyone who, is kind of asking questions right now, I am trying to support local bookstores. And so if you'd like a copy of the book, we could do like a little giveaway for a couple people, and I'm happy to send it to you through Bookshop, just as a way of supporting small businesses right now while everyone is struggling a bit.
That is awesome. And I know AJ was asking earlier, like, is this session, okay for beginners? And like you said, this was something that you were able to do as a beginner, and it looks really polished. It looks really tight. I like the fact that you said, you linked out to certain places instead of embedding it too, because I think it just kind of keeps the whole thing looking really clean and consistent.
Yeah.
Looks so good.
Yeah.
Was it easy enough with using Super and also embedding the Google Analytics side of things? Was that straightforward enough?
That was, I actually had support from the founder of Super, who saw the site and was like, oh my gosh. So we were messaging back and forth on Instagram, actually, and he helped me get everything sorted out. The experience there was awesome. Like, I was really impressed with him and, just the whole thing. I mean, because that was an important thing for me, is I really wanted to make this a subdomain of the, bumpin.com URL, instead of it just being like a random Notion site, so that people could more easily access it. Because I'm doing, like, actually in an hour from now, I'm speaking at like a big summit, like a virtual summit. So what I like to be able to do is just say, hey, like, visit, it's covid.bumpin.com. And then it's easy enough for people to just access that, rather than like, it's Notion
slash
URSTLE, like, it's really nice to have that functionality. But I was a total noob when I did this. A friend of mine suggested that I use Notion in that way, and I was like, I don't think that's what Notion's for. But it's, since then, like, actually my publisher, Simon & Schuster, a couple other friends in the publishing industry are really interested in what I've done, and the feedback has just been awesome. I think it's a great tool for authors or anyone who, is thinking about how to really make something that exists in one medium much more robust.
Absolutely. And I think it's probably a lot easier to update your Notion page than it even is to update Squarespace, which is not even difficult to update, but it's just so much.
Absolutely.
Right?
Yeah, it's very, so very cool. Easy for me to update. Oh, go ahead.
I know somebody suggested, Radu was saying, I suggest you make use of galleries to even better structure the content. But I actually, I think that's personal preference, but I think what is so accessible about your layout is that it's not using databases. It's very simple with the text. Like, you've got those toggles. I actually think that's going to be, a lot less intimidating to a beginner landing on the page that maybe doesn't know how to use Notion. So I think that's personal preference. I think you've done a great job with the way you've organized the information.
Thank you. Yeah, and I think, for me, since a lot of my readers are not necessarily tech people, in fact, like, a lot of them are, like, what is this Notion thing? And how did you, is this something that I can use? And, where did this come from? So a lot of the people that read my book are not, they don't live in Silicon Valley or even coastal cities. They live like, they're living in Texas, they're living in Nebraska, they're living in Minnesota. It's not an audience that's just living and breathing the tech industry all the time. So I think that's another thing that's was really kind of important to me, was that it feel familiar and accessible and not too kind of whiz bang. And that's what I was running into with a lot of other platforms. Actually, it was just way too complicated. So yeah. And Victor, I totally feel you, man. I was, I had a lot of really opinionated people kind of telling me what to do and how to manage my pregnancy. And I read all these other books, and I just kept thinking, like, I don't really want you to tell me what to do. I want you to present the information, and then I want you to let me construct the experience that's right for me and my family. So that's, that was really kind of what, oh yeah, I'm from Texas, actually. I grew up there. So JR, I'm totally with you. I just mean that there's a cult of knowing every single startup in Silicon Valley that is not quite as prevalent in Texas, which is actually a reason that I like visiting Texas. I went to school at the University of Texas at Austin, so I'm actually on the advisory board to the school now. So it's really cool for me to kind of, bring that. And I've shared it with them too, and they're like, "What is this? Like, this is so cool." So I think there are impacts for people in the university setting. All kinds of different cool ways to use it that I think really fall out of the ways that, a lot of us that have been steeped in tech for so long evaluate it.
Love it. I don't know if anyone else has any specific questions to maybe the way Leslie did that. I know there were some questions about best practices about sharing public pages and that sort of thing. It sounds like your page, I mean, you're using super.so. You can also use fruitionsight.com. We're going to chat with the founder of that as well. But so this is a public page. It's not like you're afraid of anyone sharing this. It's sort of like make it widely accessible, right?
Yes.
Open
sourcing my book was the goal. I love it when people buy it, but honestly, I think it's really important right now that all of us just share information and help people have healthy pregnancies and, start their families and just have access to, not conjecture about, what's going on with COVID and everything else, but just here's what we know. I'm not going to postulate. I'm not going to be an armchair epidemiologist. I'm just posting, things from my OB editor. I'm in touch with a lot of people in that space, but I thought it was really important that we just be as, everyone needs to share right now.
A great question came in from Edgar about lovely use and lovely topic. Are you capturing any data, emails, etc., from the people that land on this Notion page?
I do have an email capture at the bottom. I think a lot of people don't make it down there. I would love to get everyone's emails, and if there's anyone who wants to get updates from me, I am, working on getting Substack set up with this kind of thing, so I can update, people based on what's been published on the page. And but yeah, I mean, for me, really, right now, I'm so focused on just helping people because I get so many questions from pregnant women who are very nervous about what's going on. And I felt like it was just my responsibility, as someone who's written a book and who's kind of, become a speaker in this space, to just be as transparent and open about it as I could. So yes, I'm definitely gathering data with Google Analytics, but email has been kind of a secondary goal, but I should do more of it.
I know someone made a comment that there was no mention of Notion in these pages and was curious if it'll be somehow added in the future, indicating pages made by Notion. I mean, obviously by default, if you're sharing a Notion page publicly, you're going to see that little Notion icon in the top right. But I think what's nice about kind of hosting your site on it is you get to decide. You could always put a little thing at the bottom like this site was built with Notion, but there's no need. If you don't want to, you don't have to do that, but you kind of have the option to do that. So
yeah. I actually would happily do that. It is not on here anyway. And I guess when I did, when I did move away from, when I started hosting it on my own domain, that all disappeared. But I agree that actually, it's kind of a cool thing to add. And it's certainly been a talking point with lots and lots of people. They're like, how did you do this? I'm like, Notion, it's really easy, actually.
I love that. Yeah, what a great example. I think anyone, certainly for authors, I think it's just such a brilliant example of what you can do. So yeah, Leslie, thank you so much for this tour. I've been sharing your site with a lot of folks just to be like, look what's possible. This is awesome.
Yeah, well, I'm thrilled to be here, and I'll stick around for a little bit if anyone has any other questions. But otherwise, I'm very easy to contact if anyone has questions. And then, if you get notes from people who would like a copy of the book, I'm happy to send it out via Bookshop, a couple copies.
Amazing. Thank you so much for coming on today.
Thank you for having me.
Very cool. Okay, so I'm gonna close your video window, and then we're gonna invite the bearded Notioneer here. So thank you so much, Leslie.
Thank you.
Cheers. Hey, Nick.
Hey guys, can you hear me?
I can hear you. Welcome, welcome. So Nick Janes is the Notion, he's a Notion Pro and the bearded Notioneer, and he's been hosting some pretty awesome resources on his site. So Nick, I don't know if you want to do a test screen share and we can pull up your examples.
Yeah, sure.
Awesome. Yeah, and people who are asking about changing the Notion URL, we are actually going to get into that. There's super.so and there's also Fruition. And we've got Stephen, who is the founder, creator of Fruition, who's going to talk through his open source project so that you can host your own custom domains on your Notion sites. So we will get more into that, I promise.
Can you guys see my screen all right?
I can. Let me zoom in. Got your incognito window.
Yep.
Perfect.
So yeah, I started with the incognito window just because I'm doing some things that are a bit different. So I wanted to be able to show those things. So I put in beardednotioneer.com. It actually redirects to Notion as a subdomain for beardednotioneer.com. And so I'll talk a little bit about that. But quickly, I'll just kind of scroll through my site. I've changed the layout a little bit.
Did it say buy me a beer?
Yeah, it says buy me a beer. So that's just buy me a coffee, but I changed it to a beer because, quite frankly, I would rather have a beer than a coffee. But sometimes
That's
at 9 a.m.
fair.
it's not as appropriate. So, no, but yeah, this is my site. One of the comments that was in the chat was about the footer, and so to show you guys something that I've done with that is I have this made with Notion in Raleigh, North Carolina. It's embedded into my site as an HTML snippet. And so I have a video coming out about HTML snippets and hosting them through AWS. And so that's something that I've been kind of working on and playing with, is getting different embeds to kind of work natively within Notion that aren't necessarily like a / embed property.
Right.
So that's something that I've done, and definitely go ahead and check that video out. Another thing that I've done is created these link trees. So for anyone that's kind of used Instagram for a little while, Linktree a couple of years ago kind of blew up. And the whole point of it was, if you think about Instagram, in your bio, you can only have one URL. And that one URL you could link to like maybe your website or something. And so it's hard to drive traffic to your other platforms or your website or whatever it might be with only one link. So Linktree started and it became a paid service. So I have a template for this on my site as well. But it's basically just a series of call out blocks, which have a different logo depending on the platform it links to, and then obviously a link to the platform. And so I have a couple of different versions of these. So let me pull in my actual Notion window here.
And would that be a link that in your Instagram profile then you would link to that Notion page instead of a Linktree link?
Exactly, yeah.
Cool.
So if I click on it, hopefully it will show it. So you can see my link here is exactly the link that we were just at. So if I click on this, it essentially is just going to bring me back to the page I was on. But
Nice.
yeah, there you can put different things. So like obviously doing this crowdcast today, I made sure that I updated this and put the link here because I put a post out about it so people could easily find it. So it's a pretty good resource and a way for people to kind of find your links.
Yeah.
And so just to share something here, so this is in my actual Notion setup. And so I have a couple of different kind of sites that I manage, I guess. Some of them are personal for like resume type things, and some of them are, geared towards Notion or something else. So I kind of just typed this out when Leslie was going over her section. So that way it was a little bit maybe more clear to people. But what I'm kind of doing is I'm remapping my main URLs to the subdomain. And so I do that so that way if I want, or in certain cases I do, have my main site pointing to maybe a website hosted on WordPress or a custom website in AWS or something like that. I have that flexibility. And it also allows me to do this email forwarding. So I can create Nick at all of my domains and then forward that to my personal Gmail account. So that way I avoid paying essentially the G Suite fee of $6 or $12, whatever it is today, because I don't need all of the other Google apps because I already have that through another site. And so there's no point in me paying for all of these users when I essentially already have the G Suite for a different domain that I can just forward them all to. So I also have a video in the pipeline on how to set this up and how to do the redirect as well, using something similar to what Steven's done with Fruition. So hopefully I can, I've been chatting with him a little bit, so hopefully I can get some of these features integrated into Fruition as well. And then I'll also calling out with kind of the links, something that I'm doing here as well is I have my main link tree, which kind of goes to everything. So be it like a personal link that I'm sharing publicly, like my Twitter or something like that. And then I also have a / link tree link for kind of each of my subdomains, if you want to call them that, which go to only Beater Notionary links. Yeah, and so something else that I think people would find interesting is, and another thing that I was talking to Steven about is this discuss kind of thing on the bottom of my site. So this is where you can go in and basically have these comments and these reactions here. And so if I go to a different page on my site and scroll down, you can also see that this shows up as well.
We actually had a question come in about that. They're like, Nick, can you show us a little bit about how you're building that page, the IMDb one?
Okay, yeah. But then on my link tree, I don't have it. So something that I kind of customized, there is some resources out there about embedding this discuss block into your site. And so what I've done is gone through the JavaScript and modified it a little bit. And I've basically created tags. So what Steven's done with the hiding the slugs. So I built off of Fruition with the goal to basically take the feature that I added and embed it back into fruitionsite.com as an additional feature. And so what I've done is I've created a tag. So you can say, I want the discuss on every single page of my site, or I want it on none of the pages. And then you can also have a whitelist and a blacklist. So if you set the flag to, I want it on all my pages, but then you want to blacklist essentially your Linktree page so that it's cleaner and there's no comments on it, then you would just add the / Linktree slug into the actual basically list. And so my idea is that by the way that I've set it up is to work with Steven. He's created, and he'll show this as well, he's created this little web app. You can go in there and add just like a checkbox to be able to click it on and off to turn the different, discuss blocks off on certain pages. So that's kind of my goal. And then I also am looking towards kind of automating the update of having your slugs be hidden. So that's another feature that I'm sure Steven will talk about. So that's kind of how I have done it. So more to come on that. And hopefully it'll be kind of natively embedded into what Steven's got as well.
A question came in from Gray that I think is a good one. He's like, I want to hear what Nick finds frustrating. What did you want to do in Notion website stuff that you found that you can't yet? And so maybe that was part of it. But are there any limitations, whether it's in tracking, are there any SEO limitations of hosting your site on Notion? Like, are there anything that you kind of find still frustrating or isn't quite there yet?
Yeah. So if you get to know me, you'll kind of find out that if there is something that doesn't work or doesn't happen or doesn't really work well in Notion, whether I can actually make it happen or not, really anything in life, I'm going to try. And so that's actually led to a lot of cool findings as well. But yeah, I mean, from the SEO standpoint, I'm not, too familiar and not an SEO guru by any means, but I think there's definitely some things there that could be improved. And for different things, like I'm going to go ahead and show this and hopefully people don't hate me because it's not out yet, but a lot of people are creating databases for like their watch list and stuff. And we all know that the API is coming, So what I've actually done, and this is just like a little test that I've done, is put the IMDb tags into a name field, and then using the unofficial API on the back end, I'm actually pulling a bunch of information from IMDb, like the cover, and then all of the information, like how long it is, how many ratings it has, who's the director, the runtime, when it was released, things like that. So when you're doing things like this, it makes it a little bit harder to be able to track, and like if you want to kind of monetize this how do you actually track who's using the automation and who's not. So that's something that I've been exploring that I think as the API comes out will make it a little bit more, a little bit easier to do. There's some other things in the back end with doing different code things with Spotify and things like that, where you want to be able to not have to log in every time. And so I know that's a frustration that a lot of people have had. But using the custom URL, you're able to kind of put a lot of things into your site, which you don't get out of the box from Notion by default. So
yeah,
hopefully that answers it.
That's pretty cool. That's awesome. Yeah, I mean, you've got tons of great videos and resources on your site too. So yeah, if people want to go a little bit deeper, a little more advanced, go to notion.beardednotioneer.com. I think we've included that in our resources below as well. That's awesome. Is there anything else, any other like fun or weird, use cases or things you're experimenting with or things you're excited about?
Yeah, I'll show this. It used to have its own domain, but obviously with the coronavirus and everything kind of shutting down, we're not doing these anymore. But this is something that I've created I host a cornhole tournament every Wednesday here locally. And so I've used Notion to kind of create that landing page. There's a template for this as well called event sign up on my site. But I used the Typeform back when Typeform was free and didn't have as many restrictions on it. So that's what the sign up and unsubscribe stuff is. But what was really cool that I was able to do is for any of you guys that do different tournaments or maybe gaming, because I think that's what it's geared towards. When you do tournaments, there's this thing called Challenge, which does bracket generation, and it's got a nice API as well. But what I was able to do is basically go and create the bracket, and hopefully it loads. Go and create the bracket and actually just embed it into the page. So that way people could come to the site, they could use it to sign up, they could use it to check, what the bracket is, who they're playing and things like that. And what I started to integrate before COVID essentially was, there we go, creating a text tool. So what it would do is it would actually look at the bracket and it would say, okay, this person is now, available to play because this score was just reported for the previous tournament. And it actually sent out an automated text to the teams essentially to say, player 1 and player 2 are playing on, board 3 or whatever it was. So this is something cool that I did a long time ago, actually. And now that a lot of different features have come out and what Steven's done and Super and those things weren't even out and kind of a thing in Notion. So I need to go back and revisit and kind of clean this up a little bit. Something else that's kind of fun that I did.
That's cool. Another question popped in. How much coding have you done for your pages?
So really outside of what Steven has available in Fruition Site, I've done a little bit here and there for getting the discuss blocks in there. But theoretically, if that gets embedded, that there isn't any code to get what I have done on my Bearded Notioneer page. I have done some, HTML stuff, but I've tried to hide a lot of the kind of code from the user. And a lot of it is just kind of using an HTML generator and then copying and pasting those things. So it does use code, but it's, copy and paste code that's created for you. So I try to make those things as user-friendly as possible because I know everyone's not doing stuff with code. But I haven't released as much content as I would have liked up to this point, just because I've been spending a lot of time with the unofficial API trying to get different use cases out there and kind of play with it a little bit. So that way when the official API comes, I can kind of hit the ground running. So if you guys do have any ideas or like struggles, I know like duplicating large databases or large setups is an issue that a lot of people are having. So I'm trying to explore those issues and see how I can create a tool to be able to, solve those problems for people. So if you guys do have any ideas, just drop me a line or you can go and comment on my site and I'll start tinkering with it. And if I get something, you'll definitely be the first beta user that I get to give me some feedback. So
that's awesome. Thanks so much. AJ was saying, wow, really, really handy and helpful. Unofficial API. Can we have a look at it? Mila was asking.
Yeah, so the what I use for all of my kind of development within Notion is Python. And so I can put the link in the chat as well. It's just called Notion-Pi, which is a library that has been created to interact with the API. So I'll put this in the chat.
Cool. Great.
Yeah, if people are interested in the kind of the code bit as well, I can for sure do some videos on that or whatnot. And if you're looking to kind of create your own or do a walkthrough, we can definitely discuss that as well. So
cool. Thanks so much, Nick. Really appreciate it.
Yeah.
Cool. And I've added your link to the resources below. So again, you can always check those out afterwards. And yeah, thanks, Nick. I'm going to close your video and we're going to say hello to Stephen from Fruition Site. So thanks again. Right. Cheers.
Yep. Thanks, guys.
Stephen, hey. Great
Hello.
to meet you.
Thank you. Yeah, I know I'm not as a pro as everyone else. Still pretty new to all the Notion pros and consultants, but yeah, it's been great to interacting with everyone in the past couple of weeks.
So for anyone that doesn't know, Stephen is the, I guess, founder, creator of Fruition Site.
Yeah, side project. So
yeah.
Job and all that.
I don't know if you want to do a screen share and show Fruition Site, but I've been playing with it myself. It's so much fun. It's really straightforward, even if you're not super techy. If you do want to host a custom URL on your Notion setup, so Fruition.
Do a quick screen share just to show everyone.
Let's do it.
All right, let me set that up. All right.
And then we'll have Conrad Lin come on, and then we'll do some Q&A toward the end. So hopefully we can address some of the folks that have had some very specific questions around sharing and databases. I usually recommend sharing a different browser window than your Crowdcast window, just so we don't have the repetition. Yeah.
Let's see. Should be all right. Here we go.
Cool.
Okay, cool. So Fruition, it's a little side project I did a couple of weeks ago. I was thinking it'd be really cool to build your own website with Notion. And with the sites like super.so, it's actually really convenient if you want to pay a little bit of money per month and have a managed solution, meaning you don't have to really worry about the hosting. But there are folks out there who want to do it by themselves, save a little bit of money, and this is what Fruition is made for. And thank you, Nick, for basically showing what Fruition enables, and I really appreciated that. So I can save a lot of the same thing that Nick has already talked about. But the basic idea is you can have pretty links. So you can see here, fruition.com. It doesn't have all the usually there's a page ID at the end. You can have custom domains. You can also, pretty links includes these pretty URLs. So for example, I have my own little database set up showing all the sites people have built. And you can see here the URL just set to showcase instead of the usual Notion page ID, which is long and hard to share. And I know everyone has been pretty frustrated by that, but this is a way around that.
So when did you discover that as an issue? When did you start working on this project?
Started working on it about a month ago. It only took me about a weekend to do.
What? That's super impressive.
That's mostly thanks to someone open sourced the script to actually enable custom domain. So the great thing about open source community is you get to extend on top of what people have built. And I really encourage folks to build on top of Fruition as well, which is what Nick has been doing. And that's great about open source software is you know how it works, you can actually see it, and you can play around with it. So so I took the existing script, I made it a little bit better with things like pretty URLs. You can add things like Google Fonts, add your own script. And a lot of these is inspired by super.so. I just wanted to make it accessible for folks who want to spend some time but save some money.
I mean, it doesn't even take that much time, too, even for the time.
From what I've heard, but there are folks who be able to done it faster, which is great. So I'm not going to go over the step-by-step for anyone who's watching and are interested in doing it by themselves. You can go to fruitionsite.com and follow these steps. Every step has screenshots, again, using the toggle which is Leslie showed. It's actually really quite amazing. It used Cloudflare, which is a way to kind of route things, and it's free. For the most part, if you get a lot of traffic, you do have to pay for Cloudflare, but for most folks, say you just have your own personal website, it should be all right. Cool. And as Nick nicely mentioned, I built a little front end, like a web app for you. So you can just go here, you can say, hey, I have a domain, let's call it like Lotion or something. And then here you would copy the link from Notion and paste it here. And what this does is it generates a script. So if you're familiar with the open source solution out there, you have to kind of manually update this yourself, which is kind of painful. So I built a little front end to help you do that easily. And you can also add things like pretty links. So if I want like lotion.com/about, and then you paste the Notion URL here, you can add another one /contact, and then you can paste the link for contact here. And then you can also like customize your page title, description, a bunch of other things. Now all you need to do is copy the code and then paste it into the Cloudflare code editor. That's it. I know I'm saying skipping quite steps, but yeah, that's the.
It was pretty straight. Basically, if you read carefully, even if you're not, a coder, if you read it very carefully and you follow the directions, everything is laid out really, really clearly. And I think it's pretty straightforward. And there's lots of people in the Notion community too. I know there's like Notion Made Simple. There's people on Twitter. So if you do want to try the tool and you kind of get stuck, there's lots of people, I think, who are out there kind of willing and ready to help. So
yeah. And it's been great hearing all the responses from the Notion community. I never knew how big the community and how like passionate everyone is. But seeing people
surprise
all the emails and stuff like that makes me really excited to see like where Notion heads in the future. And especially with the API that is coming up. Yeah, I'm pretty excited to see where I can take that in the future. If you guys have any ideas in terms of things that you want to enable, I'm all ears. My email's on the site, so shoot me an email if you want to, have ideas for more functionalities or, in the future what the API can enable. I'm happy to help out. So yeah.
Super cool. Do you have any predictions or kind of, I guess, things that you're really excited about once the API opens up? Like, what do you think is going to happen for fruition?
Yeah, I have a lot of ideas myself. I am also very transparent, love to share it with you guys too. If someone ends up building a better version than I did, that's great, good for them. Like there are two ideas that I was actually thinking about. The first one is basically like Zapier, but built for Notion. So you can, for example, say you want to keep your current setup on WordPress because of all the commenting functionality, all the integration you already have set up, like just have your content control in Notion. So you can just edit Notion, everything gets automatically updated on WordPress, and it's like a two-way sync. Yeah. And then the second thing is, like, for example, you can do that for Shopify too, like Shopify stores. You can update your all your products. Say you add a new gallery in Notion, it becomes a new product in Shopify. Or you get a new sales in Shopify, and then you see that as like a new row on your say on your orders table. You can do that for MailChimp. You can do that for like basically every SaaS software out there. And I'm pretty excited to. That's one of the things I'm exploring. And if anyone's, I'm sure many of you have thought of the same thing too, and happy to hear your thoughts as well. And then the second thing, actually. Marie, it's like, I wonder if there will be ideas to have the API to help consultants like you to simplify the work streams. For example, like, I imagine you have, certain setups for certain types of clients. Then if there will be a front-end interface for you to say, hey, like say you're working for a design agency, and usually the building blocks are all the same. Like currently in Notion, you have templates, but say you want to mix and match. Like you have, say, a clients table, and then you have like a CRM, you have like a bunch of different things, but you just have one front end. You click, hey, I want this, I want this, I want this, and then it just adds it right to to the client's workspace. So that's just
That's been on my wish list for a long time. Yep, that's pretty awesome.
Cool. Yeah, I'm just coming in from like the engineer perspective. I know there are a lot of passionate consultants out there. Would love to help when I can.
Very cool. That's awesome. Thank you so much, Stephen. The tool is amazing. I'm really excited to experiment even more with it. So, and of course, Conrad is a user of Fruition as well, right? You're like a fan.
Number one on the love.
I think I'm your number one fan for sure. You've unlocked so many interesting possibilities for me, and I really like what you're talking about for the like no code template builder. I think that's amazing because that's what I need, because I have so many different templates now that, you know, if they can connect in like a dynamic way based on what, you know, our community wants, like they only want, you know, meal planning and they want, you know, being intentional this way, and you want success plan, and it comes together. That'll be so lovely. I'll be your first customer there.
One more after. I know I actually met you guys in person for the first time today, because I literally just came on the whole scene like a couple weeks ago, and you guys have been experts and been here for years. So appreciate all the work you guys already put in.
Oh, feelings mutual. Yeah.
Mutual here.
Amazing. Yeah. So Conrad, do you want to showcase just some of the ways you've been using Fruition? And I know you've got like a pretty advanced setup too. So I think it's really cool to just see behind the scenes of your setup.
Yeah, of course. And I'm actually super excited because there's just so much you can do with it. So let me bring it up. I'll follow your advice and not share my Crowdcast window. So there's no infinity there. But yeah, can you guys see my screen?
Yeah, it looks great.
So I've been pretty known for doing some ridiculous things with Notion. So I'm going to go like stage by stage and kind of show you like from like a beginner's perspective, like a 1 minute setup to maybe like a 10, 15, even an hour setup, 1 hour setup rather, 15 minutes to an hour. So, the first thing is like having a Notion blog. And of course, this is, quite straightforward, just based on what you've already heard before. You just have, blog dot whatever domain you want, or you have it as a, is this a subdomain, or you can have it as a normal domain. But you can see that it's very clean. You can put things in like a list view. You can see, the writing you do, and then you can scroll through. It's just basically a blog site. But something that's quite interesting is I also put like a embed of a sign up form as well. I know someone was asking before, could you add like a sign up form to capture emails? And I say, yes, you definitely can. And one thing that's pretty interesting here too, I'm just going to clear my cookie so I can show you how it looks. But I also have a embed because of Stephen's amazing Fruition utility. I can also have a pop-up form that comes up. Actually, I decided to have a slide-in form here. And you see right here, then it slides in, and then I can capture any email that I want. And it's basically like as if I had my own site anywhere, except that I'm using Notion, except this took me like 5 minutes to build and just host in like that. Another really interesting way to use Notion too, and something that Stephen alluded to, is you can use it to feed into your normal sites that you're using on like WordPress or etc. I personally use Gatsby.js. So basically what happens is these are the same. This is exactly where I write my blogs. So I write my blogs in Notion. I write my newsletters in Notion. But on my website, I actually am able to see it all on a React front end. So the latest technologies, I can see all my blogs presented in a different way. So basically, I have a whole new way of presenting this information, but actually on my dedicated site as well, but using the same database backend. So that's also really cool, because that means that I don't need to copy and paste any of my content into anywhere else, right? I just need to update one database. My Notion site gets updated, my proper, site gets updated. I say proper of quotes. I think everything anyways. But like, it's just super cool because like I can even host my whole newsletter now from Notion. So like everything is now just straight from Notion. Again, I have the same pop-up form here. I even have like embedded, email sign-up forms as well if you want to subscribe to my newsletter. So it's really, really seamless in my opinion. And I just think, I personally save so much money, and every example I show you, I'm going to tell you exactly how much money I saved. Okay, so so before I was using like Squarespace, I was using Webflow. Definitely the minimum was like $100 a year, if not like $200, depending on which service you go with, because some are more expensive than others. Now I pay $0. So that's pretty cool for me. And if you host on Netlify, it's also completely free to host as well. So you can have an AWS server powering your site without even needing to pay a single cent. So that's pretty cool for me. And then just to scale it up, another way you can use it is if you have like a wiki of sorts. And of course, public wikis is not a new idea that Notion is brought up, but this is like a public wiki on your own domain, which I thought was pretty cool because it means that it's more accessible than having like that huge long slug, that ID behind the URL that you normally have. And you can just have a place where you can share publicly what you do, like what resources. For example, this is for the Coast 3 community, a community that I've been building. That's basically just people that are really passionate about productivity, growth, and learning. And basically, I can even use like gallery views, or in this case, board views, really in an interesting way where I'm showcasing like what kind of content I'm going to deliver for our community initiatives based on each day of the week. So this is something that I definitely couldn't do in like a normal website without having to code something specific. And I just really love that I'm able to take like elements that Notion already has and then essentially build on, use it as the front end of my site, so to speak, without having to build any knickknacks and use any code. So far, still no code used, right? And it's still completely free. This is also completely free. Nothing extremely special about this in terms of integrations, but the next one is going to be the one that's super, super interesting. So let's go to that one now. So one thing that I run a business, so I'm a founder of a startup. And one thing, that when you're starting up a company is you always need to test out your ideas. You constantly need to keep testing what kind of copy works for your customers. What do they resonate most with? You need to see, what they click, what links they click on your site. It's just a lot of things you need to keep iterating. And if you have to hire a developer every time you want to code a new website or a new version of website, or even if you use any of those professional website builders that are for landing pages optimized. So like I'm talking about like Unbounce, I'm talking about those kind of sites. Like that takes like $100 a month. So that's a lot of money to be spending, especially when you're bootstrapping and you're trying to get off the ground. So what Notion is able for me to do now is I have a site called powerup.conradlin.com, and it's just a consulting site for Notion stuff that I'm able to help with. But basically, I'm able to use custom fonts. So you see the font looks very different from what you would see on Notion, right? You'd be able to see like you can make something very, very beautiful. You can have completely however you want to make it look and feel like. And something that I think is really cool here is I also embedded a chatbot. So this is also completely free. And again, it's through the use of Fruition that you can embed a chatbot. And basically, this is a bona fide landing page. There is no difference between this and something you would get professionally for $100 a month, because you get a chatbot, you get to have your own custom domain, you get to have a sign up form at the so I have a contact form at the bottom. So this is collecting, anybody that wants to have an inquiry with me. I can have links that goes back to top, and then I can just jump around the page. Like everything is as you would need in a professional business site. And I just think that's just so amazing for the low price of $0 a month. Yeah. And of course,
it only requires a little bit of code, a little bit of no code, wizardry, but
yeah. Like just copy and pasting the scripts. And again, I think Steven's done a really wonderful job putting like a UI where you just copy and paste the scripts for like Google Analytics or, your chatbot that you find. And it's just one line of code. Like seriously, it's one line of code. And then you put it in and then it works out of the box. So it's quite interesting here.
So the chatbot is part of Fruition. It's like a pre-existing thing that you can use through Fruition, or do you kind of have to have a service, or how does that work?
Yeah, so the chatbot's really cool. Like you can use any chatbot you want because every chatbot has this kind of integration. I just use HubSpot here because it's completely free. It's part of their free plan to, I think it's unlimited chats as well. So there's no limitation. Unlike some other chatbots, you got to pay from day one, or there's a limit on like 100 chats. Those are just a bit not friendly to me, at least. So I use that. It's free. And then what happens is you just log into their portal. Once you set up, on HubSpot, then they give you a link, and then you paste that link of the chatbot into the Fruition utility, and then it'll generate a script for you to then paste into Cloudflare to get it all up and going. So yeah, it's quite easy to do. And I have a video showcasing how to do that actually. And that video is only altogether like 5 minutes long. So you can kind of imagine how long this whole process takes in general. But I think the longest part of this is just building the page to how you like the look and feel. And if you're doing that in Notion anyways, because you enjoy building on Notion, I don't think there's necessarily anything that's too difficult for you to try. And like I said, a lot of the things that you would have to find a template for and then code it in terms of like gallery views, in terms of, lists, all those things you don't have to do anymore. And it's just really seamless, and you're able to really, get a really beautiful look and feel that you'd like. And also, like, I do have like another interesting example to show too. Like, for example, like if you are a consultant yourself, because I know a lot of you, like me, admire Marie a lot, and maybe have considered going into doing consulting or building like resources and selling courses or that kind of thing. You can kind of imagine something like this as well, where you can have like a nice landing page. You can have a view for different things that you offer in terms of courses or templates or anything you have. Basically, I'm just giving you examples of how you could reimagine everything in your Notion workspace to be actually not just your internal system, but an external public-facing kind of engagement platform for you to not only engage people, but also collect information about them to help you deliver more value to them. So a good example of that, like something that I find myself is pretty ridiculous too. Like, and if I think it's ridiculous, I think you guys think it's definitely ridiculous. But basically, like I have a place where I kind of collect reviews, right? Because I want to know the feedback on the resources I give. And essentially, you fill this out. And one thing I have is, because I'm using Chili Pepper, by the way. This is chilipepper.io. Chili Pepper is a free forms provider for Notion, but basically like you can create like multi-selects, etc. And what I've done is because of their utility, again, no code, is you can use a webhook, which means that you can send a response when someone finishes this form to anywhere you want. You can send it directly into a Notion database, which I'll show you in a second. You can send it to your email as an email, someone sent you, a review. Or what I've done, which is really, really over the top, is you see that light behind me. I make that go, rainbow colors whenever I get 5-star reviews. So essentially, if you want to wake me up in the middle of the night, you want me to, just jump awake, you can send me a 5-star review. You'll see that that'll wake me up for sure. And then I'll send a very nice thank you email back to you, thanking you for that nice review. But yeah, so there's a lot of things you can do with Notion now. I just think it's amazing. And like, if you even wanted to have like guided tours through your site, like you can use Typeform. I think we had Nick talk about that too. That's all embedded. And again, that's all on a custom domain, and even with the prettier URL. So you see that it's not just a subdomain, but it's also like a end slug as well. That is my customized slug. So in this case, it's Gamify. And then just, I think one more last example I want to show, because I'm just so excited here, is that example is if you want to collect information from your customers or collect information from your community, maybe you run like a church group, maybe you run like, even your classes, right? And you want just some way for you to interact better with the people you're talking to. Well, you can have that form, and right beside it, you can have the table for showing, everyone what the submissions are. So for example, if I just put something, I think Marie's a hero, right? Hero, she's from Earth, and then, makes amazing Notion systems and helps everybody be productive, right? And then my name is Conrad. And then if I submit this, you'll see that this immediately pops up in the right-hand side because it becomes a new submission and it goes directly into my Notion database. So this is just trying to help you unlock, like, oh my God, there's just so many things I could do. Like, you think about it, like the reviews come out automatically, right? For, if you're, like, say, our first presenter, she had a book, right? And maybe she wants to collect reviews, and that's how she can. Yeah. So I'm happy to answer any questions. There's a lot of utility here, definitely.
Yeah.
anything that comes up, happy to
No,
answer.
this is good. I was kind of hoping to have you kind of at the end because I figured there would be some questions as we like sort of escalated our advanced level throughout the session, and so there's definitely a couple questions that have come in. So people have had their mind blown. People are pretty stoked. I know we had a couple people asking about like where they can find out, how you did that in Gatsby and all that stuff. We did include, there's the resources from the session below. And so again, you can always go to conradlin.com or blog.conradlin.com, notion.conradlin.com, and all of those links will be included below. So you guys can dive a little bit deeper into Conrad's content if you're interested in going a little bit deeper. But one of the questions that
sorry,
came
just to jump in quickly,
Yeah.
just to help you not be so scared about the Gatsby integration as well. I made a video guide on it. It's altogether 10 minutes, and I have like a very detailed like step-by-step process how to do it. Honestly, I didn't have much knowledge of coding beforehand. I probably knew some HTML, and it was like a very beginner level. Maybe I coded like one email before in my life. And it was actually through this project. It was a weekend project for me, and now it's Friday. So maybe spend this weekend, try it out. You can have a really beautiful website. This is just one side of it, right? This is the Notion powered side, but then you can even create custom pages that look really, really nice. Have like images, videos in the background. You can, have like mobile windows, and all these resources I also include in that blog that I wrote to share this information. So you can just go to my website, and then you can see this is one of the guides I have. And yeah, it's really fun. It's all free. And then I'm just really happy that you guys would find interest in it. Yeah, sorry.
That's awesome.
Back to you.
No, that's great. This is really great. I think people are definitely going to be checking that out. And I mean, even Leslie said, she wasn't a super advanced Notion user. She'd only been using it for task management and was able to do that within a week. So I think there's really a lot you can do. It does take a little bit of tinkering, being willing to play with it, and you'll get the hang of it over time. So it's awesome that there's, so many people here providing amazing resources that we can go check after the fact. Gray asked a question I thought was kind of interesting. He was saying, as a designer, I'm kind of frustrated with the grid layout of Notion, aside from the icon overlapping the cover image. Any neat layout image font tricks you'd like to share?
Yes, I have a lot of those. So I think that might be interesting for you. And I think the best example I have is like this one, this site. I don't think you normally would, can you guys still see my screen? Sorry.
Yeah.
Sure. Okay. Yeah. So I don't think, so I don't think you would see a Notion site that looks like this. And I think it was because it was really intentional. And by the way, I have to give credit where it's due. Marie had the initial version of this, and then I took, a lot of creative insights from her to then add on. So again, thanks to Marie for that. But basically, like, you can have a lot of different dividers that are segregating your content so that you can have interesting views like this, and even especially like this. Like normally you can't center font, you can't center headers, or you can't center images, right? So you might ask, how do I do this? So actually I do want to show you this because I think it's interesting, and this is a good learning experience for a lot of people who are looking to do something like this. So let me just change screens over to my editable version. 1 second. Hopefully I don't take too long to do this.
No worries.
And then I'm going to show this. And then for now, I'm going to turn off my my dark mode, so it looks like how it presents out there. I'm a bit laggy right now. Okay, cool. So how does this work, right? So if I hover over here, you'll see that I actually have a divide. I have 3 columns here. I made a 3-column section here. So if I expand this way, right, you can see it's actually going to still stay left aligned, but it's actually because I have empty space in this column and in this column that it's becoming smushed into the center. So that's how I force something to be centered, even though Notion doesn't technically allow it. And another way that I do things is I also like to use images, right? So you see there's an image here, but how is this centered? Well, again, it's because I have a section here and here that's kind of sandwiching everything together. So that's one hack on how to center information, like center headers, center images. And if you want to do something like this, what I've done, like how do I make like my signature right aligned? Well, this is more like a very low level hack in my opinion, but anyway, I'll show you. It's basically like just an image. So my image is just that long. So it's always hugging all the way to the right side of the image. But another example here is like I have like empty space right here just so that I can have some like good spacing between like this kind of like hero text and this kind of GIF, that motivational kind of thing. Yeah, and like another thing, like let's see another hack that I can show you that I thought pretty cool. Yeah, even for these kind of things, like I like spacing things out a lot. And again, I think Notion's one thing is that if you put everything like without any line breaks, it kind of just smushes all together. So again, like my happy thing is like I'm able to put nice dividers between things, put some images, so I'm expanding it a bit, so there's some space between here. And then, just being able to like use different styles of fonts and, even coloring fonts different ways, I think is pretty interesting to kind of just change the look and feel. I think that's how I say it. Oh, and another thing too, another thing that I like to, where I want to show this. One more thing here is global blocks. I wanted to show global blocks. So, one thing that is really useful when you start building these kind of public sites is how do you make the most minimal changes to every single site when you have a change. So for example, if you have like a generic footer, right? For example, my footer generally is like, contact me. So all these texts are stored in a global block database where I change the global block one time and every page that has this specific content will change as well. So that means that I have, 4 public facing Notion sites. I don't have to go in and change every single page and every single subpage where I may have a credits or may I have, any other, a form, for example. So let's say I want to update the form. I want to add one more field. I need to update all the forms in one go. Well, I don't have to go in and plug and play every single one. And I just change one global block. Yeah.
Love it. Someone was saying, how can you change completely a database once you've done it? I've created a calendar database for my tasks, but I struggle a lot to make it a plain page. I'm not sure how to answer that. How do you completely change a database once you've done it?
Do you mean changing the properties or changing the content? Like, are you worried about the integrity of your content?
I'm not sure. There was no name on that person's question. There was a couple questions about sharing and permissions that someone said I think could be worth digging into. If you have time, could you go over tips and best practices for shared pages? Go into more details about the differences used for public pages / shared pages. How can I give a restricted access to collaborators and control what they see and don't see? And I don't know if we have time necessarily to cover that, but there is some great Notion documentation around the sharing and permissions and that sort of thing. But you can either make your page public access in the top right-hand corner of your site, or you can have kind of private pages that you're only inviting collaborators in by email. So that's on a per page basis, and you can have pages inherit the properties of the sort of pages that live inside them. So don't know if we have that much time to go into it in this particular session, because I know there's a lot of nuance around the sharing and you got to get a little bit comfortable and familiar with it. But in the case of these pages that are used with Fruition Site, those are public pages, right? So all of those are turned on, available to the public. I'm assuming you've turned off duplication abilities, but people can access that publicly.
Yeah, and I think too, like if you use the, well, there's hacks around it, but just something for you to know as well. Like if you share a page with the Fruition hack or SuperSO, whichever you choose, people can't duplicate the page until they go to the actual Notion.so domain as well. So if you're sharing something with the intention of it being duplicatable, you probably want to keep a link inside the page that says, hey, if you want to duplicate this, click this link first so that you can go to your actual Notion.so domain to duplicate it. Yeah. Otherwise, then, if you just want to share it as like a public website, and of course you may not want that to be duplicatable, then just turn that off and just keep it, public. Yeah.
Cool. Someone was saying, this is awesome. I was spending more than 180 pounds a year on my Squarespace. I could actually make the same content even better on Notion. Yes, you could.
I also want to add on there.
Yeah.
Then. Okay, so I mentioned like Unbalanced, you save $100 a month, 100 US a month, like for sure. Like that's their lowest pricing, which was frustrating for me as a business owner. And then for Squarespace, for Wix, for any of those generally is around maybe $25, $25 a month at the most, maybe $5 to 25. Then you have hosting. If you go like GoDaddy or you go like WordPress or anything, that's like another 10, 15. If you do like collecting forms, Typeform, I know Nick has mentioned their price has gone up. So unfortunately, they're not as, friendly for the wallet anymore. But, I know for sure, like, just form collecting is not a cheap service. Like there's a lot of services that offer that again for $50, $100 a month. So all these things add up so much. And then I'm trying to tell you guys that, if you guys want to start a business today, it's not hard. If you want to tell the world your story, it's so easy. And Notion has given you all the tools you need, especially with the free plan now, especially with great creators like, Steven creating, that amazing Fruition utility, especially with all these hacks that everyone's passing around. Like you don't need to code anymore. Really, truly, you don't ever need to code anymore. And you can get everything in, and I mean, I just think it's amazing.
There's no more excuses, right? We can't kind of blame the technology for not taking action anymore.
Yeah.
I don't know if you have any resources on Global Block. Somebody did ask about that. I know we did cover it, so I'm not sure at what point that question came in. But yeah.
Yeah, so if you go to the resources, I think Marie linked one of my latest videos, which talks about these kind of hacks. I do go in depth about how to get that global blocks working. And again, I do like to give credit where it's due. It was introduced by someone called Ben Smith in the Discord community. He's a great guy. He found that hack. And then William Nutt popularized it. It's also on his YouTube channel where you can find out how it's done. But I also do share along this kind of stuff, how I did it, how I use it for like embed blocks, like my reviews, form and that stuff. So just click that resources below, and or I'll even link the YouTube video here if you guys are really interested. Yeah,
that's pretty great. Yeah, one of the ways I use Global Blocks is for quick adding items to my weekly agenda or inbox or whatever, so that no matter what page I'm looking at, I can very quickly add a note or an idea. And then if I am done with that, I can delete it, and it kind of deletes it from everywhere. So it's kind of a quick capture, which is pretty handy.
Ooh, that's interesting.
But there's obviously so many interesting ways you could do it. So I know we're like over time, there's still lots of questions and such, but we'll probably just have to take a peek at them and distill them and figure out if there's room for, a secondary session on some of these topics. So again, Conrad's got a ton of great resources. So definitely put that on your reading list for this weekend and check some of those out. Thanks everyone for coming. And again, don't forget to check out those Notion resources, notion.conradlin.com. Hope this session was interesting and helpful to see how both, power users, but also everyday people are using Notion in some pretty fascinating ways. So thank you everyone for coming. Thank you, Conrad, for showing us your amazing setup. Amazing. I think people are pretty inspired and excited. So Corey said, Conrad's stuff has helped me beat the weekly slog. So great.
Thanks, Corey.
Cool.
Yeah,
okay,
thank you, Marie. Thank you, everybody. Really happy to be here. And just let me know if you have any more questions. Always happy to help. And you guys have a wonderful rest of the week, and have a good weekend.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Conrad. Thanks, everybody. Cheers.
Bye-bye.